Now, a wave of rappers are getting caught up in serious investigations, federal cases, RICO charges, murder indictments, you name it. Over the last few weeks and months, we've seen a surge of stories coming to the surface. Rappers, affiliates, hip-hop moguls, and even people in the same circles. A lot of people are getting arrested left and right. So how exactly are the feds catching rappers in 2025? Let's take a look at a few different cases and break down the tactics being used. Before we get into how the feds are operating today in relation to catching rappers, it's important to realize this isn't something new. The concept of HipHop Police has been around since the late 90s. It all started after the death of the notorious B.I.G., when the NYPD formed a special task force focused solely on rappers. This wasn't just regular surveillance. This was a dedicated unit, monitoring hip-hop artists, their lyrics, their movements, and the people around them. The goal? To crack down on the growing violence that was being linked to hip-hop culture at the time. Now, that was back in the late 90s, and a lot has changed since then. Technology has obviously evolved, and so have the methods. Back then, the HipHop Police had to physically follow artists around, but today, they don't even need to leave the office. Cell phones have become the biggest game changer. From location data, to text messages, call logs, and even deleted content, phones are helping solve crimes in ways that were never possible before. Rapper YNW Melly was one of the most promising new voices in Florida rap when everything changed for him in 2019. He was charged with the double murder of two of his closest friends, Christopher Juvie Thomas Jr. and Anthony Sack Chaser Williams. But this wasn't just a typical investigation. Prosecutors didn't rely on just witness statements. They brought in an FBI expert to analyze cell phone data, which turned out to be one of the most crucial pieces of evidence. Surveillance footage showed Melly and the two victims leaving a studio together in a Jeep, and phone records placed them in a desolate area shortly after, an area where police now believe the murders actually happened. The data also showed that Melly was with the victims just minutes before they were dropped off at the hospital, already dead. Despite the defense arguing that phones were shared among the group, the prosecution used text messages, timestamps, and location data to build a digital timeline that painted a very different picture. Even though Melly's case started years ago, it's still unfolding in 2025. And it shows just how advanced these investigations have become. Aside from the YNW Melly case, these same tactics are being used in brand new cases, including one that just made headlines, involving rapper Yella Bezy. On March 20, just over 2 weeks ago, Yella Bezy, real name Marquise Conway, was officially indicted on murder charges in his hometown of Dallas. The indictment accuses him of hiring Keywan White, the man identified as the shooter, to kill North Dallas rapper Mo3, whose real name was Melvin Noble. On November 11, 2020, around 11 a.m., Mo3 was driving on a Dallas freeway when he realized he was being followed. Mo3 eventually stopped his car in the center lane of the highway, trying to escape the threat. A man wearing a ski mask, later identified as Keywan White, was tailing him in a black Chevy Camaro. Keywan White then got out of his car with a rifle and chased Mo3 on foot in broad daylight as traffic came to a stop. Mo3 shortly before tried to grab a weapon from his vehicle, but couldn't get to it in time, and so he ran. Shortly after, at approximately 11:56 a.m. that day, police responded to the shooting. Witnesses saw Keywan White fire multiple rounds, striking Mo3 and even hitting other cars. One bystander was injured by a bullet fragment while sitting in their vehicle. Mo3 was rushed to the hospital, but he didn't survive. A suspect for the murder, Devin Brown, was later arrested after phone records showed he had been making suspicious calls before the murder, trying to track Mo3's location. Shortly after, Keywan White was identified as the actual shooter. Police received anonymous tips after releasing surveillance images to the public, including a tip from a woman who said she overheard White admit to the shooting. She also provided his Instagram, and detectives confirmed he matched the build seen in the footage. Since it's been 4 years of the murder of Mo3, the story looked like it was going to end there, with both suspects heading to trial and no known connection to Yella Bezy. That was until just 2 weeks ago, when Yella Bezy was picked up by the feds and indicted on capital murder charges in Texas, which is essentially a death sentence. I don't condone murder, but if you're gonna take a life, don't do it in Texas. According to the indictment, this wasn't just speculation. Investigators reportedly uncovered direct communication between Yella Bezy and the alleged shooter, Keywan White. Text messages and other digital evidence suggest that Bezy was in contact with White in the days leading up to the murder of Mo3, but it gets even deeper. Prosecutors told Judge Gracie Lewis that the state has a witness prepared to testify that Bezy was part of a conversation about the payment for the hit, and just days after the murder, Yella Bezy allegedly withdrew $40,000 from an account, money that prosecutors believe was tied to that payment. It's the kind of slow building behind the scenes case that shows exactly how the feds operate today, collecting digital footprints, tracking financial movements, and waiting for the right moment to strike. Because up until this point, Yella Bezy was out living his life, posting, performing, and moving like everything was normal. But behind the scenes, the feds were building their case, and it was the digital traces he left behind, texts, phone records, and money transfers, that started to paint a different picture. In 2025, it's not always about catching someone in the act. It's about collecting the digital breadcrumbs and connecting the dots later on. And that's something the feds have mastered. They did the same thing in the famous Lil Durk case after Lil Durk was caught making a payment from a bank account linked to OTF, something that the feds thoroughly investigated, which is why Lil Durk is currently locked up. When it comes to rappers, it hits different, because for a lot of street rappers, having credibility is more important than anything else. That pressure to prove you're really about what you rap, it leads to songs that sometimes do more than just entertain. They help the feds connect dots. Lyrics and music videos, they all become pieces of evidence when the law starts looking closer. But it's not just songs, it's really social media getting a lot of rappers caught up. In the now famous YSL RICO case, the indictment specifically pointed to social media content as evidence of real criminal activity and gang ties. It even included screenshots of posts where Young Thug was seen wearing red, flashing gang signs, and referring YSL, which prosecutors labeled a criminal organization. In other words, the feds were treating these posts like digital confessions. They also used wiretaps to capture private conversations involving Young Thug, and in one of them, prosecutors say Thug asked his associates, "Y'all ain't beat him up or shot him yet?" before adding, "Y'all niggas getting soft." This exchange was listed in the indictment as another overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. It's obviously not a crime to post on social media, but when there's a pattern, when the lyrics, the photos and the captions and even the conversations all start lining up with real world violence, that's when it becomes a problem. That's how something meant to boost image and street cred can suddenly turn into evidence in a federal indictment, something that the feds are taking full advantage of. Another example of how deep these investigations run is the case of rapper Casanova, real name Caswell Sr. In 2023, he was sentenced to over 15 years in prison for racketeering and drug trafficking charges tied to the violent Gorilla Stone Nation Bloods gang. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, Casanova wasn't just affiliated, he was a high-profile leader who helped expand the gang's reach nationwide. He was involved in a shooting at a house party in Florida and helped traffic hundreds of kilos of marijuana under his own 2X brand. The gang he represented was organized, violent, and active across multiple states, and the feds have been watching for some time. Casanova eventually pled guilty, and his status as a public figure only made the case stronger. The feds essentially had everything they needed. They didn't need to get no flashy confession. After all, they had thorough documentation of the organized crime that Casanova and his guys were involved in, and Casanova had a lot of public visibility, so the federal task force had already connected all the dots. In almost every case, it's the rappers leaving behind the trail themselves, whether it's lyrics, messages, or posts. These digital traces are what end up putting the pieces together for the feds. The era of posting online and thinking it won't catch up to you is of course over. We already know that the feds have entire departments dedicated to watching social media pages. People literally get paid to sit back, scroll, and document everything. But not every city is just sitting back and waiting to hand out RICOs. In some places, law enforcement is trying to step in before things get worse. And that's exactly what's happening in Florida. In Jacksonville, there's a task force led by Sheriff TK Waters that's taken a different approach, something YouTuber Peter Santinello got exclusive access to just a few weeks ago. Instead of letting young rappers and gang-affiliated individuals stack charges for years, this team is watching social media closely, especially Instagram. And when they see someone openly towing guns online, that's a signal. And that's when they literally end up, showing up to your house with paperwork, warning you that if you don't stop, you will be arrested. It's what they call proactive policing, a way to intervene before the violence actually goes down. In about half of these cases, the warning actually works. They take it seriously and change direction. But the other half, they keep pushing. And by that point, it's already too late. The feds, of course, have been watching. The evidence is stacking up and the case is building itself. They let him post, they let him brag, they let the crimes pile up until one day they show up with a stacked case against them.
A lot of stuff that they do is they follow these guys on Instagram Live. They understand what's going on, they hear about things that are going on, then we interdict them before they get a chance to go do bad stuff.
At the end of the day, this isn't just about rap music. It's about how closely the streets, the internet, law enforcement, and everything in between is connected in 2025. Every post, every lyric, every DM, it's all being watched. Honestly, you would have to be a fool to think that you're under the radar these days. Because under the RICO statute, a case gets thrown out if the person didn't commit a crime within 5 years of the indictment. That's why the feds don't even need you to be active right now. If they can prove you did something within that 5-year window, they can still hit you with charges. And that's exactly how a lot of rappers end up getting caught off things they thought were already behind them. This is the new era of policing, the new era of crime, and the new era of rap. And the question is, will street rappers learn from this? And who exactly is next? Because you know how it is, there's always going to be someone brave enough to go down this path. If you made it this far, drop a like on this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new here, my name is Blacky Speaks. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Welcome to the family. What do you guys think about how the feds are catching rappers in 2025? I mean, a lot of rappers are catching Ricos these days, man, and I think it's kind of crazy. But what do you guys think about this? Really curious to hear what you guys have to say, okay? Catch you guys in the comment section below. Most importantly of all, catch you guys in the next video, man. I'm out. Peace.